Okay, good afternoon and thanks for joining us. Before we start today, I'd just like to do an acknowledgement of country. We would like to recognise the diverse traditional lands on which we are each located. We acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands and we pay our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, recognising the elders past, present and emerging. So, welcome to the tour of Oxford Humanities 7 to 10 Victorian Curriculum. We'll just run through some of the issues that we found in terms of research we conducted with teachers about Oxford Humanities classrooms. Then Paul McCallum's going to take you through a digital demonstration of the what we call the OBook Pro, which will demonstrate some of the ways we've managed those issues that are presented. Following that, we'll have some questions and answers for you, and then we'll just run through a few other things. So what are the issues in humanities classrooms today? Skills and concepts. Skills are just as important as content, but are often more challenging to find dedicated time to teach. Content may change from year to year, but skills and concepts are the through line of humanities subjects. Focusing on skills in years 7 to 10 helps to future-proof students for success in senior humanities subjects. That's very important. Mixed ability classrooms. Humanities requires students to use literacy, numeracy and graphicacy. Creating opportunities for differentiation takes time. So now we'll talk about how Oxford Humanities 7 to 10 Victorian Curriculum addresses those issues and more. I'll hand over to Paul to take you through the OBook Pro.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for attending today, for your time. As we know how valuable teachers' time is, so we really appreciate you making that time. What I'll do today is talk you through the OBook Pro and how it relates to the printed book for Oxford Humanities 7 through to 10. With the OBook Pro, the good thing is I can go into any year level and you'll see that the structure is the same for all 7 to 10 books and the way that it's organised. So it doesn't matter what year level I go into today, you'll see that structure and you'll be able to utilise that understanding if you go into any of those year levels. It's just the content, of course, that changes. Good thing, a few things before we start as well, is today's being recorded, so we'll get that recording to you afterwards. You'll be able to go back to it, you'll be able to share it as well, because I will be giving you a fair bit of information and dumping that on you today. The other thing is we'll be giving you a gratis copy of one of the humanities books as well. And what I'll show you is there's some of the front content pages explain the different features and how the book's designed to be used as well. So that's another thing that you can come back to as a reference tool when showing someone else, for your own information, talking to your colleagues in your school as well. So when you first land in an Oxford Humanities OBook page, this is what it looks like. So you'll see your name, welcome to Oxford Humanities, Victorian Curriculum. On the left-hand side, you'll see the front cover of the book. You'll see under that the read button. If you click that, it'll open the OBook, and I'll do that in just a second. To the right of that, there's also a download PDF. So you can access the whole book as a PDF if you need to work offline. So we know technology is great when it's all working, but it does not work on occasions as well. So you can always access the book in that PDF format as well. There's a few things that you'll see at the top of the page. So the home button, which you can always come back to, the resources, which we'll go into very shortly, as well as the assigned work and reports tab as well. So these tabs I'll talk through in a bit more detail as we progress through and see how they all line up and how they work together with the the printable book as well. One other thing that you will notice when logging into your account and into the landing page is if you scroll down, there's notifications on here if you have assigned any work and if there's anything that you need to attend to as well. So let's start off with going into the O-book. Good thing about the O-book digital is it's exactly the same as the printable book. So this is nice and easy to navigate. If you are looking at something or your student is in the printable book, you can find it exactly in the same page in the O-book reader as well. And it starts from the contents, of course. So Oxford Humanities 7 to 10 covers geography, history, the economics and business, and civics and citizenship. You'll see on those next pages the contents and skills. So in this table format as well, you can see the curriculum strands that they sit in. You can see the key skills of each of those curriculum strands as well. Highlights where they're found, the application and practicing of these particular skills, and what pages and what chapters you'll find them in inside the book as well. So it is fairly explicit from the beginning, but it gets even more so as you progress through. This page is the one that I referred to before. I'll just quickly zoom in on it so we can see, and I'll just touch on it briefly, but as we go into the book, I'll highlight some of these features again as well. So the book itself, it's been designed to be clear and engaging, which I think it is when you look at it and you see it today. I think you'll agree. It's also meant to be streamlined and cover everything that's in the curriculum, but doesn't include things that don't need to be there. So it's made it streamlined and accessible and user-friendly for you as a teacher as well as your students as well. Just a few highlights in here. So this is the page, as I mentioned, it would come back to and reference, because there's some key points here about some of the features of the book that you can use and tap into to refresh yourself about how the book's designed to be used, and then to pass on to any of your colleagues as well. So the key skills which we talked about, so focusing on skill development, you'll see these key skill boxes referenced throughout. You'll see them in the toolkits I'll show you in just a minute as well. So it's very explicit in relation to those key skills, and they're being taught in context. So there was one of the pain points that was coming up from teachers, that it was difficult sometimes to teach those skills in isolation to the content. So what our publishing team has tried to do is incorporate those skills in context, and plenty of chances for students to hone and apply those skills. And you'll also see them in the rich tasks that have been developed inside the Oxford Humanities books as well. Something's new is the visible thinking prompts, and they're just, as it says here, to prompt students to start thinking about those critical analytical skills that they need to use and apply while working through. And that is something that, again, was a pain point for teachers, saying that you know, those skills that students are not working on enough to be able to apply in higher learning when they get to VCE and so on as well. At the end of each topic, you'll see these check your learning. So there's questions here for students to access to consolidate their learning as well. The task words are all highlighted in here and bolded, and the task words are there again to help build students' vocab, to build their understanding and application of these task words as well, to prep them again for that higher learning, especially in VCE and so on as well. The rich tasks that I talked about, these are two-page spreads that have been developed again for students to work through and have more chance to apply those key skills that the curriculum's asking them to know. Again, it's contextual, and there's also worked examples in here as well of how those key skills can be applied and used, and again in that contextual layout as well. And then there's chances for students to extend their learning and challenge those students. So we've incorporated that differentiation as well. so that you can, again, extend and challenge those students that need it. But in talking about that, you'll see how we've tried to make it more accessible for all students of all learning abilities as well, on all of those page spreads. So if we look at focusing on engagement, again, it's very explicit in what your students being asked to do, what they're going to be taught, and what they'll know at the end of each of the chapters and the topics. So the topic-based approach is the way it's broken down inside of each chapter. You'll see at the start of each chapter that there's a bit of synopsis about what you will learn about in that particular chapter. You will then see there's some overarching questions at the start of each chapter, which will focus on, what it is you're going to learn. It'll ask questions about what you're going to be learning inside of this chapter, inside of the topics. And these overarching questions are referred back to at the end of each chapter in the reviews. So inside each of the topics, the content is sequenced. So it's very linear in the way that it's organised inside of each of the chapters and the topics, the way that they're organised. And you'll see that there's learning outcomes referenced in here as well. So as I mentioned before, very explicit for both teachers and students to know exactly what you're going to be learning and what you should know by the end of each of these topics as well. Engaging with these fantastic illustrations, photographs, graphs, as John mentioned before, the graphicacy has been really highlighted inside the 7 to 10 books, and it's been a key focus for our publishing team as well, especially in that economic and business section and geography as well, because students need to not only look at these and interpret these graphs, but they also need to create their own as well. So that's been built into the Oxford 7 to 10 books also. Integrated digital resources. So you'll see these icons that are referenced throughout the book, and there's also the tabs down the bottom of the page as well, which I'll show you as we go through. So anything that's part of each spread inside of the humanities books, if there's a resource that's attached to it, you can click on it inside the O book, but you can also access it via the resources tab that I showed you earlier as well. We mentioned differentiation before, so you've got those rich tasks that students can all be a part of and utilize, but with those extension and challenging tasks that are part of that. But inside each of the spreads, the publishing team has really highlighted and focused on making it accessible for students of all learning abilities, and to also assist teachers with students of all learning abilities as well. So you've got things like the margin glossary terms that are here. So they're bolded and blue contextually inside each of the the text in relation to the topic that's being taught. But instead of having to go to the back of the text to find those glossary terms, they're found in the margins so that students can refer to them, build up that understanding and vocabulary knowledge, and then continue reading contextually as well. Easy to access text and design. So you'll see as we progress through today that it is accessible for everybody. Very easy to read and to engage your students. Structured questions throughout, especially in that check your learning at the end of each of the topics, the chapter reviews as well. The quizzes that your students will come across, so that they are not only structured in, they increase in difficulty as they progress through, but there's different, especially in the interactive digital quizzes, different ways that students can access and answer those quizzes. So it's drag and drop, drop downs, moving interactively across timelines. So again, it's trying to tap into those different learning abilities and ways of learning as well. And again, to engage students in relation to their understanding and assessment as also. At the end of each chapter, the chapter review, which we've talked about. So each chapter ends with that review. It's there to help consolidate students have learned. Those overarching questions that I mentioned before at the start of each chapter are then referred back to. There's marking rubrics that are part of this. There are questions that are editable that teachers and students can access as well at the end of each of the books, each of the chapters, sorry. A new part of the new front list for Oxford Humanities, Oxford Science, Oxford Maths from year 7 through to 10 is these STEAM spreads that are incorporated into each of the 7 to 10 books. There's 2 different projects, part of the STEAM focus in each of the 7 to 10 books. And as you can see with these spreads, that they are the same across those different subject areas, and that's to tie in hopefully with cross-curricular activities throughout a school, especially if there's a particular STEAM focus throughout the school as well. And we sometimes get the question, why STEAM, not STEM? It's again, to really incorporate humanities and the arts, because it's not just science, technology, engineering, maths. It's actually incorporates the arts as well. So this page, definitely a great reference tool, as is the next page as well, because it talks through the components of the O book, but I won't go through this because I'm going to go into it and show you each of the pages as we progress through for the O book. But these are all at the front of all the humanities books, so you can come back to as a reference for yourself, for your colleagues, and utilize that with the webinar as well, and have a good understanding, okay, which is sometimes a bit tricky, especially when accessing a new resource, and also in making decisions about new resources to incorporate into your school. And that's why we're running these webinars. That's why we have these spreads inside our books, because we want teachers and students to be as knowledgeable and as informed as possible about these resources when utilizing and making these decisions. So some of the buttons that are down in the O book, you see I've been clicking on that book content, which brings up the content page. I'll just talk through the contents before we come back to any of these other resources. So if I scroll through, just like it is in the contents page of the books, I can go to any of the chapters. There's a drop downs as well, so you can see each of the topics that are inside those. You can see the chapter reviews. You can see the rich tasks that are referenced in here as well. So if I go to the start of a chapter, it will take me directly to this. The good thing about the O book too is that I can bookmark different spreads. It will also allow me, if I close the book and go back to the home page, next time I open it up, it'll bring me back to this page as well. So you can see here with chapter 2, Introduction to Landscapes and Landforms, gives a synopsis of what the actual topic is about. We've got 2A in the overall question, the overarching question that's referenced here, which relates to the content that's going to be taught throughout this particular chapter. So what are landscapes and landforms? And that's that overarching question that we'll come back to inside the chapter review. If we progress through, sorry, I'll just get my zooming going. Again, we'll see with the spreads, as we mentioned before, we've got those learning outcomes referenced at the top of each of the page. So in this topic, you will identify and describe different types of landscapes around the world. This content, these learning outcomes are related directly to that content that's found in the curriculum, the syllabus. You'll see those margin references that I talked about before for the glossary. So these words that are referenced contextually inside the text as students are reading through. That glossary is referenced in those margins as well, so it can be read contextually and quickly. The glossary is also found at the back of the text as well, but this is there to make to help with those different learning abilities in the classroom and make it more accessible for different learning abilities as well. So those icons I mentioned before, so we'll see these referenced throughout the book. You'll see them in the printable book as well, but when you're in the O book, if you click on these, it will take you to the different resources. Any other resource that's referenced on a page, I can see by clicking the resource tab at the bottom. So I can access it through those icons. I can also access it by seeing what resource is referenced here. Okay, so we can see there's a number of resources that are part of this particular spread. So we've got student book questions, we've got the teaching program, we've got teaching notes that are there to assist teachers teaching this particular topic and the chapter and all the content that's in here. Student book questions and answers. We've got an Explore It that's what we mentioned there. So a virtual field trip of the Himalayas, videos that are referenced in here, the worksheets, the answers, interactive maps. So there's lots that have been incorporated into the digitally into the resource to, again, help with that engagement of learning, but also to help with those different learning abilities and learning types as well. A couple of things I can do inside this resources tab as well while we're here is I should actually assign different resources to students. So if I wanted them to actually look at explore it or to watch the video, I can click on it. I can assign. I can pick a start date and end date. So let's say today, and I want it done by Saturday. Click apply. Click the class that I want to actually send this to. And it will bring up the students inside that class. I can select all of them. I can deselect and choose, and it might only be some lower level students or some extension students that I want to access this. Click apply. I can send it with or without an email notification. The good thing with the email notification is it will send an email to them to say you've had work assigned. And then if you don't send the email notification, when students next log in to their own student dashboard, they'll see that there's work for them that's been assigned. The good thing here with the email, though, is I can actually send a note and say, it might be, heaven forbid, that we're locked down again, so you're working remotely, that you want to send this information to your students prior to getting to class the next day. But again, you can have that flipped classroom as well and get them prepping activities and work prior to coming to class also. So it's a nice, easy way to set those homework tasks. Different ways that you can utilize this as well. So I can write a note, send it off, home and send, and that will assign that work to those students when they next log into their dashboard. Okay. It'll also show me in the assigned work tab when we'll be logging in just a minute, and I'll show you that. So it's referenced there. It'll tell me a few other things about who has and who hasn't completed those activities as well. All right, so all the resources are here as part of this spread, and those resources, as I mentioned before, when I go back to that home page, I can access via that resource tab as well. So we've got, as I mentioned before, the topic. We've got the learning outcomes referenced here. We've got our glossary in the margins as well for our students to read contextually, build up their vocab and understanding. We've got the check your learning questions that are found at the end of each of these topics as well. So these questions that students can answer to help show you how their progression is working as well. So they can answer these questions, as you can see: review and understand, apply and analyze, evaluate and create. And inside there, you'll see that those task words are bolded, and that again is feeding back into continually highlighting what students and what task words students will need to know to build up that understanding, that application of being able to identify and describe and explain, so that when they're progressing through up into VCE, that they have these understanding of these task words and they can apply these particular task words as well. All right. So again, if we progress through the spreads, I can navigate via the arrow buttons at the bottom of the page. While I'm in here, I'll show you a few other little things that you can do. You've got a dictionary. So if you wanted to look up the meaning of different words, so that's all referenced here for you as well. You can type into the dictionary too by hitting the dictionary button at the bottom. You may have also seen when I highlighted a setting, the three different colors, the circular colors come up. So I can make notes by highlighting this way. So it might be something that I want my students to read. This has been introduced to the new Digital iBook Pro to help cut down on that copy and paste for teachers. So I can quickly highlight something that I think is of value as a teacher, or that I want them to particularly hone in and focus on, or it might be that I'm finding in there when they're being assessed that they're missing something, and I'm checking their learning. So that's formative assessment I can use and tap into as well, and say, okay, well, you missed this when in your assessment. Go back and read it and work out an understanding, and ask me any questions if you have those as well. So I can write that in here. I can save the note. The note will sit in this page until I want to delete it, or it'll sit there forever. What I can do when I have that note there, though, is I can then assign it as well. So it might be a whole paragraph that I want to highlight, or you can even, as before, highlight whole pages and spreads, so you can send those off and assign them to your students as well. So I might want to send this off again, like I did before. Highlight my class, any of the students that I want to send it to. So it might only be PJ McCallum, because they mucked it up in their assessment. Then I can see that they're struggling a little bit with this component. I need them to focus on it a bit more. And it's been sent to their dashboard. So that's a nice little tool for teachers to tap into as well. All right, so as we're progressing through the chapter, those rich tasks that I mentioned before, so these are, again, another chance for students to for application of those skills, those key skills that are being asked for them to learn in the curriculum, and for you as a teacher to teach these skills as well. And again, it's one of those pain points that we've had highlighted by teachers, that it's very difficult to teach these apart from the content. So that's why they've been built into the content and been so contextually that application and learning of those key skills can happen. So these rich tasks are here, again, for all students to utilise. The progression of questioning does get increasingly more difficult as you progress through, so to cater for different learning abilities and to extend and challenge those students that need it towards the end as well. Again, you'll see these key skills are referenced here as they are in the toolkits, so that you can go back to those toolkits at any time and highlight those as well. That's one thing I meant to mention before, is each of the learning areas have their own toolkits. So everything in here, everything that your students need to know and to learn, and you as a teacher need to teach, are referenced explicitly. So we'll see in each of these toolkits at the start of each of the chapters, what are the concepts that you see referenced in the curriculum that students will need to know. They're all in here. All of those key skills that students need to know are referenced in here. They're broken down even further as well and have each of their own topics for those key skills, for, again, contextually how they actually students can learn them and apply them. And this is something that you can use as a teaching tool, and your students can come back to at any time as well. So these key skills are referenced in the toolkits, and they're referenced throughout the content that's found in each of the chapters and topics, as well as those concepts as well. Those key concepts that need to be taught are also found throughout the book also, and you'll see them highlighted, with those key skill boxes and the key concept boxes as you progress through. So that's where the rich task comes in, because there's a more chance of application of that key skill knowledge and learning. And then we get to that chapter review at the end. So as I mentioned before, those overarching questions are then referred back to. What are landscapes and landforms? And then it's broken down even further with questions for students to answer. So those questions are referenced in here. Studentable questions, the answers as well. And there's also Quizlets that have been developed for each of these topics. So this is another fantastic feature that the publishing team have developed. So if you haven't used Quizlet before, it looks like this. You've got different little activities that you can do inside here. And because they've been built by our publishing team for that content directly out of the Oxford Humanities books, it saves so much time for you as a teacher. And it's a fun and engaging way for your students to learn, a different vocab and different concepts and skills and content that you are teaching them throughout the humanities books as well. So you've got things like the flashcards, the learning, the test. I won't go through it all now, but if you haven't used Quizlet before, it's all free. So, and you can also access it as a class, and you can have leaderboards and that as well. So another level of engagement there. So that is how you'll see each of the chapters constructed. So we have the introduction at the start, we have the overarching questions, we have the topics inside of those that are broken down, and we have the check your learning, we have the learning outcomes for each of those as the students are progressing through, the key skills, the key concepts are touched on contextually throughout here, and then we have the chapter review to finish it off with a summary and also some assessment to see where our students fit with this as well. So you'll see the same thing with history. You'll see the history toolkit is here, as it is with geography. Those concepts and skills and all broken down. Chapters are the same. Economics and business. It's got the toolkit there as well. Same with civics and citizenship. The STEAM projects that we mentioned earlier, all referenced here. So there's 2 projects that you can tap into as a class. You can tap into them as a year level. You can tap into them as a whole school, as I mentioned before, because they are built across the different subject areas, so humanities, maths and science, and their exact STEAM spreads are found in all the 7 to 10 humanities, maths and science books as well. Glossary, again, as you see it in the book, like everything that I'm showing you now is found in the student book. Index, acknowledgements, world political map as well. Plus all those little tools that are part of this. And at any time, I can hit that home button and it brings me back to that landing page where we began. All right. Now, I failed to mention before, I'm sorry, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat box, and the lovely Alicia will answer those as we move through. And as John mentioned, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of this as well, and we'll endeavour to answer those questions if you have them, but haven't answered them as we move through. And we will be contacting you later on for to get you your gratis copy of the Oxford Humanities. So we'll be able to follow up with you, and if you have any questions that you think of later on, or if some of your staff members have, we can definitely help you out with those as well. All right, so that's the home button. Now we go into the resources tab. You can show teacher-only resources if you like. So you can see here the course planners are all referenced here. There's teaching programs for each of the chapters. It's very explicit again, very teacher friendly to make life easier for you. This is one of the reasons that a school buys a program, is to make your life easier, to make sure that you're covering everything that you need. And then you can focus in on the important things, which is actually teaching your students and focusing on what their needs are. And this has been the overarching reason why we've redeveloped humanities, maths and science, because of feedback from teachers like yourselves, to make this more user-friendly, more relevant for you to utilise in class. If we scroll down, once we toggle that teacher-only resources, you can see the huge amount of resources that are incorporated into the new Oxford Humanities. I won't go into them all. The good thing about this is following today, as I mentioned, we will be contacting schools that have and teachers that have attended, organising your free copy, but we'll also be organising for schools that are interested full digital trials starting in term 3, so that you can really, again, be as informed as possible, come and give it a go, see how it's going to work for you and your school, and if it's going to be something you want to progress with and utilise going forward. So yeah, there's lots of stuff here. You analyse this. These are sort of interactive quizzes. They're the same as the sequences as well. All the student book and teacher notes, student book answers, student book questions. And again, everything, if I scroll down, is here. So you can see it. You can filter by, let's say, I want to see all the Quizlets. Let's apply. I can see all of those. Where they're found. And that's the same for any of the resources as well. So it's a nice way to come and find these. The other good thing that I can do here is I can assign work from here. So like I could do inside of the O book, I can also assign work from here. So it might be, you know, I want to come in and assign, you know, the Quizlets to each of the students so that they know. In this example, I'll assign the analyze this for topic 9.8. Again, I click assign. I click the little box inside of the resource I want to assign. I decide on the end date, the start and the end date. I click apply. Find my class, very simple, and then decide which students I want to send this to. Again, if I want to send an email notification with some information on why I'm actually sending this to my students. And then once I send it off, it will then show me in this assigned work that it's been assigned, and it will come up in those students' dashboards next time that they log in. All right, so it's a quick, simple, easy way to assign work. Quick, simple, easy way to find those resources if you don't want to go and find them inside the O book as part of the spreads. So when I log into the Assign Work tab at the top, I can then click my class. I can then see straight away exactly what I've set. I can see who and who hasn't completed it. I can see my start and due dates for this. I can delete if I want to. So let's get rid of that one. Don't need that anymore. I can click on the drop down to see what the actual resource is as well, who I've assigned it to, if there's any notifications as part of this as well. So again, it's a nice, easy way for you to assign work. It's, again, why the dashboard has been built in to make your life easier as a teacher. You can send those notes. You can highlight different texts that you want students to focus in on. You can, you know, whether it's because of you've, you know, gone through, there's some formative assessment there that's telling you that they're missing something in their learning that you can go back and highlight, or if it's something that you want some pre-learning to happen prior to them coming to class, there's different ways that you can utilize that. And it's the same with any of the other resources that you're able to assign as well. So again, cutting down on your time, organized, feeds back into your teacher dashboard so that it's quick, simple, and easy for you to plan and organize your teaching and your students' learning. Now, the last tab here is the reports. Now, the reports tab is something new. It's been built into the new digital O book. And this is, again, to make your life easier. You'll see, like with the resource I just showed you with the sequence, and the quiz, interactive quizzes that are found, they're also found in your students' dashboard as well. And your students can complete those. Okay, so this is one of the sequence that I did earlier out of a student dashboard. I'll just show you. This is what happens when the student completes it. It gives them a direct history of their results. They can go through and those results will feed back into the dashboard, and I'll show you where that is in the reports in just a second. They can review their result and see where they went wrong and where they what they got correct. You can see the different questioning that's in here. So it's multiple choice. It's moving the different answers around. It's highlighting and interactively putting different information on timelines, and different drop downs with multiple choice as well. So a student can have another attempt at this. It'll always only feed back the first result into the report, but you can see their progression and how many attempts that they have if you want to come in here, and you can view this from the reporting component as well. So I'll just go back. Do the assessment report. I'll just pick a class. It's not picking up my data today for some reason, so I'll show you in another subject area how that works. But you can see at least how the assessment report is designed and structured. So if you can see the geography, I scroll across the history, civics and citizenship. I can then see my students at the bottom here. With the chapters, if I click on them, it breaks them down into the topics, and inside the topics, I can see when clicking on them what the different interactive resource and quiz is inside of those. So explore it, quiz me, sequence it, map it, all these different resources they can access. Inside the reporting, I can, and this is just directly related to the assessment, I can download CSV as well. And the other report is the curriculum report. What I will do is just go over to my biology, because I've got some data in here. Again, the same structure in relation to the assessment report and curriculum report, but with some data in here, it's just a little different. You can see the way that it's structured and organized is exactly the same. It's just the different assessments, of course, inside humanities, and of course the curriculum as well. So if I have my students referenced here, there's a few things that I can do. I can click on individual students if I want to do that. And this is a good way of, if you want to just bring a student over and talk to them about their assessment results and say, well, you know, what we can see and what we can't, I can then click inside and see some of the results that my student's getting. I can then see exactly what's happened in this attempt, what score they've got as well, how they've gone on each of the questions. So this is exactly the same as what you can do inside the humanities. So my internet is feeling the cold today, I think, so it's not loading super quick. I can progress through and see the different assessments that have been incorporated here, what my students have answered. If I go back, I can see the overarching and how it all fits. So they've got pre and post test here. And if I want as well, I can see who's above level by clicking on that, on level, below level as well. So I talked about formative assessment before. This is a great little snapshot for that, because any of those quizzes that your students are doing in their dashboard feed back into your teacher dashboard. So you can then come in here and see exactly what's happening. You can click on who's below level, what's happening. Let's click in here and see. Why aren't they answering any of this? What do I need to focus on with my teaching? And again, any of the quizzes that your students do, they're automatically answered, so you don't have to do any of that. It gives them instant feedback, and it feeds directly into your teacher dashboard so that you, as a teacher, can act on that information straight away. So it's a great tool for that. And that is just the assessment reports. With the curriculum report, it is exactly the same in humanities. It will feed back their students' results according to the assessments that they've done and how it relates to those curriculum and those content descriptors as well. So this is a study design, so it's a little different than you'd see in humanities with those content descriptors, but it's same but different. So again, I can see my students that are here. Again, it's a bit of green light, red light with what they're getting right, what they're getting wrong, with the percentages as well. I can then focus in on particular curriculum content and break it down even further inside that as well. So my students might be getting 43% overall, but I can keep breaking it down according to what in humanities those content descriptors are telling me to see, okay, because they might be getting really high scores. As you can see, it's 69% for student 10, but they're getting 80% on this component and only 33% here. So if I'm coupling this curriculum report with the assessment report, it's given me a very good overview of where my students' learning is and their understanding. It's given me great formative assessment, so I can go and utilize that as a teacher to tap into what students do and don't know. And I can do it very quickly, because as soon as they do an assessment, it feeds back to them and it feeds back to me, and then we can work on what they need to. So I'm not waiting until I have to mark an assessment myself. I'm not waiting for, you know, at the end of the semester to report against the curriculum. I can do this as soon as I start using the OBOK Pro. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Paul. Excellent presentation. I think it's pretty clear that the new humanities, Oxford Humanities 7 to 10 digital is great in terms of letting you know what you need to teach, but also letting the students know what they need to learn, and it's very easy to follow that. But plus also some great reporting, which really helps you as a teacher to identify where everyone's going, and if there's any sort of common areas that they're perhaps lacking in. It's very easy to see that. Just on pricing, student book plus OBOK, the book, the print and digital, is $65.95. The OBOK Pro, the digital only, is $45.95, and the Teacher OBOK Pro is $299.95. Of course, if your school book lists Oxford Humanities 7 to 10 or any year level, then that Teacher OBOK is provided complimentary. The Student OBOK Pro Digital is a license period of 1 year, and after that there is a digital reactivation fee of $19.95. Just introducing the sales team, we've had Alicia manning the chat, Caitlin, who's one of our newest members of the team, David Griffiths, also relatively new, and Paul, who presented so ably. They're all the team, and a rough sort of idea of where they're located. So what's next from here? PD certificates, you'll be sent an email containing a link to request your PD certificate. And in terms of the free digital trial and complimentary resource, your education consultant will be in contact to record your choice of the text and also discuss a complimentary digital trial. So look, that's all from us. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and hope that you found it interesting, and we look forward to discussing it further with you. Thanks, and have a good evening.